Do you know that moment when you're trying to help your person with dementia and they just refuse your help? They push you away, they get angry, and they say, I don't need any help, even though you can clearly see that they do. And your first instinct is to explain why they need that help, and you find yourself using logic to convince them. But here's what I've learned after years of working with families just like yours. Logic doesn't work in the world of dementia. And when we keep trying to use it, we're actually making things harder for everyone, including yourself. I'm Laura Wilkerson, and I've walked alongside hundreds of families through this exact struggle. I've been the nurse practitioner in the ER when families bring their loved ones in, and I've done house calls where the tension in the room is so thick you could cut it with a knife. And I've sat with daughters and husbands just like you and listened to them whisper, I don't want to do this anymore. And I hear you. And I want to help with that. So today we're going to talk about why your loved one refuses help, why logic feels like speaking a foreign language to them, and most importantly, gentle ways to offer support that preserve their dignity and your sanity. So, first off, let's talk about what's really happening in your person's brain when they refuse help. Because once you understand this, everything starts to make more sense. Dementia doesn't just affect memory, it affects judgment, reasoning, and the ability to recognize when help is needed. The part of their brain that used to say, oh, I could probably use some help, isn't working the same anymore. And here's the thing that really breaks my heart because their emotions are still very much intact. They can feel embarrassed, they can feel frustrated, they can feel like they're losing control of their own life. And when we come at them with logic and tons of explanations, what they hear isn't, I love you and I want to help. What they hear is, you're not capable anymore. I had a patient in my house call practice who would get so angry every time her daughter tried to help her get dressed. Her daughter would say, Mom, you put your shirt on backward. Let me help you fix it. Mary would just shut down or get combative. But when we shifted the approach to, Mom, I love that shirt on you. Want to check it in the mirror together? Everything changed. We were we weren't pointing out what was wrong. We were perceiving what was right. And here's what happens when we try to use logic with someone who has dementia. We say things like, you fell yesterday, so you need to use your walker. The doctor said you need to take this medication. You can't drive anymore because it's not safe. Every single one of those statements, while true, is attacking their sense of independence and competence. And when someone already feels like they're losing little bits and pieces of themselves every single day, that attack feels devastating. And remember, the brain with dementia can't process the logic anymore, but it can absolutely process the emotional tone. And so when we start to lead with facts and reasons, what gets through isn't the information, it's the feeling like they're being treated like a child. And I have to admit, I've had this conversation so many times with families, and the adult child will say something like, But Laura, they need to understand why this is important. And I get it, I really do. But understand the goal, connection, safety, and dignity. So let's talk about what I call the dignity first approach and how we can offer help in a way that honors who they still are. It starts with meeting your person where they are, not where we think that they should be. Instead of saying something like, you need help with that, try, I'd love to do this together. Instead of saying, you can't do that anymore, why not try saying, hey, let me be your backup? And instead of saying something like, that's wrong, try saying something like, how about I show you a different way? This little language shift changes everything. We're not taking away what your person has, we're offering partnership. We're not highlighting the deficits, we're building upon their strengths. And that's so important. I remember walking into a memory care unit and I was working with a gentleman who refused to let anyone help him shower. And his family, they were at their wits' end because he was starting to smell and they were embarrassed when people would go to the facility to visit him. But what I found that we could do was if we started to reframe it with, Dad, you have some company coming. Would you like to get cleaned up? Or, "Hey, dad, I've got your toiletries ready. How about we go and we get in the shower?" It wasn't about their inability to shower or the fact that they couldn't do it alone anymore, but it was focusing on the fact that they wanted to spend time together. So, "Hey, how about you go get cleaned up? And we're going to spend some time together." And we made that focus about spending time together, not what he couldn't do. And look, the shower happened, his dignity was able to stay intact, and the family's level of stress went way down. And now I'd like to give you some specific approaches that I've actually seen work time and time again. First is the redirect and distract method. If your person is refusing help with something that needs to happen right now, don't argue with them. Instead, try redirecting their attention to something else and then circle back to that. And maybe you can start by saying something like, "Oh, hey, before we start that, how about I show you this photo?" Or, "Before we go do that, why don't we go do part of a puzzle together or something else in the room?" Have something that you know that they like and enjoy that's going to pull them away from what they don't want and distract them into something more pleasurable. And then 5 minutes from then, you can go back and say, "All right, now let's go tackle this other thing together." Secondly, try to make it about you and not them. Instead of saying something like, "Hey, you need to eat," or "I made you," try saying something like, "I made your favorite soup and I'd love some company. Could you come sit with me while I eat? I'd love to be with you." Or instead of saying something like, "You need to take your medication. You need to take these pills right now." Why not try asking them to sit down and help you organize the pills? And then say something like, "I want to make sure that I'm doing this right. So could you help me make sure I'm doing this right?" Make it about you and not them. And lastly, make sure that you're offering them choices and not ultimatums. "Would you like to use the shower chair or the grab bars today? Should we take your medication with juice or water?" Because when your person feels like they have a choice, they feel like they're maintaining some control over their situation. And that's exactly what we want. If we can get their buy in, they're going to do something much more often for us than when we're offering them ultimatums. And I know some of you are thinking right now, "Oh, that's trickery and that's not nice." Well, the goal isn't to trick them. The goal is to honor your person's autonomy and where they are right now while keeping them safe and maintaining their dignity. And sometimes that means being a little bit creative about the approach that we're going to take with them. Now, I need to be real with you about something. There will be times when safety has to override everything else. And this is usually when the refusal to accept help becomes a danger to them or you. But even then, how we're going to handle this really matters, because if your person is refusing to stop driving and it's truly unsafe for them to be doing so, don't take the keys and then lecture them about statistics. Work with their doctor to have that conversation. Make it about the car needing repairs. And if you're unsure about when it's an appropriate time to take away the keys, we have a great resource for that on our website. And if it's something simple like they're refusing care and it's becoming a health issue, don't shame them into complying with getting clean. Find the underlying need. Are they afraid of falling in the shower? Are they embarrassed about their body? Is it cold inside the bathroom? Address the fear, not just the behavior. It's so much more than that. I've seen so many families tear themselves apart trying to force compliance when what they really needed to do was a team approach. Sometimes that means bringing in a home health aide who isn't emotionally invested. Sometimes it means asking the doctor to be the bad guy, like when it's time to take away the keys. I've done this a million times. It's easy for me where it's hard for you. Put that on your PCP. They're not going to mind. And if it's truly unsafe, they're probably going to be pretty happy that they're not on the road with them anymore. Sometimes it's just a simple fact of accepting that perfect isn't possible, but safer is enough. And that's okay. And before I go, I just want to say preserving your relationship is the most important thing above all things, because your relationship with your person matters more than winning any single individual battle. Every time you choose connection over correction, you're making a deposit into their relationship bank. Every time you honor their dignity, even when it's hard, you're preserving something precious that dementia simply cannot take away. And your person may not remember the specific conversation you had yesterday, but they're going to remember how you made them feel or how they felt in that moment. They'll remember if you treated them with respect or if you treated them with a frustrated heart. And on the days when nothing works, when they refuse everything and you feel like you're feeling, remember, you're not responsible for fixing the dementia. You're responsible for showing up with tons of love in your heart. And some days, that's enough. Because the truth is, caring for someone with dementia who refuses help isn't about finding that perfect strategy. It's about finding your way back to compassion. And that means for them and you. You're not just keeping someone safe, you're honoring a lifetime relationship. You're preserving dignity in the face of a disease that tries to strip everything else away. And that's sacred work. And if any of this sounds familiar to you, or if any of it is pulling at your heart, I want you to know that you're not alone in this journey. I'd love to see you over in Dementia Success and Support Network. There are tons of caregivers in there just like you, sharing stories about what worked and what didn't work for them. We'd love to have you there. And I'd love to know, what's one thing your person refuses help with that's been weighing on your heart? And I'd love to know, what's one thing your person refuses help with that's been weighing on your heart? Because what worked yesterday might not work today. And the more we know and the more we talk about it, there's strength in doing this together. And until next week, I'll be here caring for you while you're caring for them. See you next week.